things like dancing, singing together, right, touch, all of these things are ways that we bond. You know, you can ask Mark Zuckerberg to give you the metaverse, but it's not a substitute. It's just something else. And that's not to say that people don't form relationships in those contexts as well, but it's a different beast. It's a different kind of thing.
Yeah, and also there's a generation of kids that have found their tribes online that they could never find in their immediate world, but they find their nerd group or their Aspie group or their, you know, their musical mates. They like death metal. They find their death metal community, you know, that they could never find in their neighbourhood in Mount Waverley. Sorry if you're from Mount Waverley. Maybe you're a massive death metal fan and you live in Mount Waverley. And I loved these last words on friendship from Sunny Kim. It's such a privilege. Life, such as in friendship, and to actually witness all the wrong things that they're doing or the challenges they go through and the problems they solve or not ever solve. You know, it's a deep privilege, isn't it? Yeah. It's an opportunity to learn and to reflect. And so I think when we look at it that way, I think on many, you know, relationships or, you know, many different kinds of people can be wonderful, you know, kind of treasures for our lives, to enrich our lives. That is just so perfect, isn't it? The privilege of friendship. That is the privilege of being alive on this earth. And I just want to reflect on the death this week of a beautiful poet in the US called Andrea Gibson. And they wrote many beautiful things. And one of them I just grabbed on the way here tonight. And Andrea Gibson wrote this poem for a friend. I think they wrote many poems for their friends. Sometimes you look like a human squiggle, like a 2-year-old has coloured you in, like you got too many feelings to fit inside the lines of your own skin. But that, my friend, is the masterpiece. Thank you for your wonderful questions. Thank you to our very special guests, Professor Mark Alfano, Dr. Peter Knight and Sunny Kim. Have a fantastic night. Thank you. And the discussion went further with such great questions from the audience at the Brunswick Ballroom for this Sophia Club event. Thanks to Sunny Kim and Dr. Peter Knight and to Professor Mark Alfano. More details about each of them in the show notes for this episode on the Big Ideas website or the ABC Listen app. The Sophia Club is produced by Eon Media, which also publishes the online magazines Eon and Psych. You can keep in touch with upcoming Sophia Club nights held throughout the year in Melbourne, London and New York by heading to sophiaclub.co. And thanks to Bridget Haynes, Sam Dresser and its whole team for this one, Natasha Mitchell. With you next time for more Big Ideas.
Well, thanks to our friend Natasha and the whole team, the whole Big Ideas team. Cassie McCullough with you. Coming up on ABC Radio National, our weekly language lesson.
They prayed, they preached, they rebelled. From God forbid, this is the Religious Rebels podcast. The stories of people who defied empires and sometimes paid with their lives. From Joan of Arc's battlefield visions to Malcolm X's final revelation, we tell the stories of those who defied faith and remained. Religious Rebels, the original disruptors. Search for God Forbid ABC wherever you get your podcasts or on the ABC Listen app.
Well, now on ABC Radio National, to Word Up, where each week we learn a word or a concept from an Indigenous Australian language. Today we're meeting Ned Japajimpa Hargraves. He's from Yuendabu, which is about, 300 k's northwest of the Tanami Desert. And it's one of the largest remote communities in Central Australia. Ned is a Morphery elder and advocate who's fighting.
I don't want any of those people that are past.
And this week he's sharing the language of peace and the words for ceasefire and no guns in
That's the most annoying thing when you pass them and they get past you again.
Word Up, bringing you the diverse languages of Black Australia, one word at a time.
Kinagay,
Birluing,
Wadka,
Kara, Bajbi,
Nalungir,
Bambash, Jamne,
Itamara, Kura,
Bija,
Rapini,
Narakuchegaba.
Learning more of Munyam,
Domininia,
Kuku.
Wakoninia,
Udadawia.
Mondingi Dangai,
Ukok,
Kuwait.
Dilkuk,
Dieta.
Muruk.
My name is Ned Jabidilla Hargraves. I'm from Utah. A community spokesman and a community leader. I work in PAW, doing translation and also doing radio work within the community. My language is Wardbury. That's my first language. The first word I would like to share with you is Karijala Mojari. Ceasefire, no guns. I think it's very important to remember what that means to us and what that means to everyone really. Meaning ceasefire, no guns in the community. You are mulai cukup. Makanya nyanyi. Meaning that's about it. I shall see you people later on.
Word Up, bringing you the diverse languages of Black Australia, one word at a time.
Can we listen to the assassin?
Yeah, Ned Jabba Hargraves,
The Assassin
their
podcast.
community spokesman and community leader in Central Australia. And we'll hear more.
What else? Two butts and kills
Next
people.
week.
A standout feature of the ABC Listen app, free audiobooks, now available. Gloomy, terrifying, Stephanie Meyer's Twilight.
Thick fog was all I could see out my window in the morning, and I could feel the claustrophobia creeping up on me.
And Casey Chambers' Just Don't Be a Dickhead and other profound things I've learned.
Hey, I think I'm all ready.
Hello there, I'm Mark Fennell, and if you're tired of history podcasts that just drone on for hours, and you just want something a bit different, well, check out No One Saw It Coming. Each week we hunt for the crucial moments,
No one saw it
inventions,
coming.
the people, the stuff-ups even, that changed the world that you did not learn about in school.
I think it's the same.
Like, did you know that the treadmill was actually invented
It's
as
the
a
same
torture
guy who did the.
kind of tracks that, right?
Yeah.
Listen now on Radio National and the ABC Listen app.
ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio,
Yeah.
news, music, and more.
When someone dies and their body is cremated, there are a number of ways that their loved ones might choose to remember that person and celebrate their life.
Oh, is this the money?
Some might scatter the ashes at a special location, a favorite park or the ocean. Others might prefer to keep them in a beautiful urn, maybe even leave it on display somewhere in their home. But one of the more unusual ways to commemorate the dead is to roll the ashes up into a blunt and get high while smoking their friends' remains. Rumor has it that's exactly what happened to the victim of today. It's September 1996, a Saturday night in Las Vegas. The Strip is packed, lights flashing, horns blaring. Every corner is humming with glitz and hustle. Inside the MGM Grand, a sold-out crowd watches Mike Tyson step into the ring. And there in the front row, wearing a white tank top, gold chains, black jeans, and his trademark bandana tied at the front, is Tupac Shakur, rapper, actor, and activist. Sitting next to him is Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records. They're not just label mates. Their relationship goes way beyond business. The East Coast versus West Coast hip-hop rivalry has grown beyond lyrics. It's now bullets, bodyguards, and body cams. There's a war going on, and these two are soldiers fighting for the same side. The battle raging in the boxing ring that night is less intense than the action on the street. Tyson knocks out his opponent in just 109 seconds. Tupac and Suge are seen celebrating ringside, laughing, smiling, and soaking up the chaos. After the fight, the crowd spills out into the casino. Tupac moves with his entourage, a dozen men in motion. Out of nowhere, they spot someone, an enemy. Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, 22 years old and a member of rival LA gang, the Southside Compton Crips. A few weeks earlier, he tried to snatch a death row chain of one of Suge's men. Tupac doesn't hesitate. He charges forward and throws a punch. Anderson goes down. Tupac's crew piles on. Kicking, stomping, it's over in less than a minute. Hotel cameras catch everything. Anderson gets up and walks away, bruised, angry, and embarrassed. Tupac returns to his suite at the Luxor and tells his girlfriend, Kidada Jones, what just went down. He changes into fresh clothes and heads to the after party at Club 662. It's around 11 p.m. when he and Suge climb into a black BMW. Suge is driving. Tupac rides up front. Their bodyguards are following in separate cars. They drive through the Vegas night, music up, windows down.
This must be when
At one point, they get pulled over by police for the loud music and some missing kids. The stop is short. They're let go. A few minutes later, they pull up at a red light alongside a car full of women who recognize Tupac and start yelling his name. He leans out the window, smiling and joking with them. A white Cadillac pulls up on the passenger side. The rear window lowers and a hand reaches out, holding a firearm. Hello, my friend. I'm Aslan Bahari, and this is Assassins, the show where we tell the stories of history's most shocking assassinations. And today, we're not talking about a politician or a general or a king. We're talking about a rapper. Well, sort of, because calling Tupac Shakur a rapper is like calling Muhammad Ali a boxer. Sure, it's true, but it's far from the whole story. Tupac was a poet, a performer, and a radical. He might have only been alive for 25 years, but in that time, he became one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. His voice cut through the noise with rage and empathy. His songs weren't just about the streets. They were about systems, poverty, policing, and racism. And then, one night, after a fight in Las Vegas, he was shot 4 times and left for dead. The investigation went nowhere. Witnesses vanished. The people who were there at the scene stopped talking. Some of them because they were dead. For decades, one question was left hanging in the air. Who killed Tupac Shakur? This is his story. How he lived, how he fought, and how, nearly 3 decades later, his murder is still being untangled and interrogated. Tupac Amaru Shakur was born in East Harlem in 1971. The name was no accident. His mother, Afeni Shakur, was a member of the Black Panther Party. She was pregnant with Tupac while on trial for conspiring to bomb department stores and police stations. She defended herself in court and she won. And when her little boy was born, she gave him the name of a revolutionary, Tupac Amaru II, a Peruvian dissident who'd led a rebellion against the Spanish and was executed for it. Tupac's childhood was shaped by activism, instability, and government surveillance. The FBI kept a file on his family. His stepfather, Mutulu Shakur, went underground after being indicted for robbery and murder. His godfather, Geronimo Pratt, served time for a crime he didn't commit. Throughout his childhood, Tupac moved often. First, Baltimore, where he studied acting and ballet at the School for the Arts. He read Shakespeare, he wrote poetry, he was charismatic, angry, brilliant, and broke. When he was 17, he moved to California and joined the hip-hop group Digital Underground. His first appearance was as a backup dancer, but he wouldn't stay in the background for long. By 1991, he was out the front, a solo artist in his own right. Now, just a quick note. The ABC can't afford to license Tupac's actual music for the episode, so until we can get some of those bluey dollar bucks, you'll be hearing the best approximation our production music library has for the sound and spirit of Tupac's timeless beats. His debut album, Tupacalypse Now, was political, raw, and unfiltered. Songs like Brenda's Got a Baby and Trapped tackled issues familiar to Tupac and his audience: teen pregnancy, police brutality, and institutional racism. Vice President Dan Quayle called the album a danger to society, and Tupac loved that. He followed it up with Strictly for My N-Word and kept rising. But so did his countenance. He was sued, he was arrested, he got into fights, he was attacked by the media, embraced by his fans, and feared by the establishment. At the same time, Hollywood came calling. Tupac starred in the films Juice, Poetic Justice, and Above the Rim. Studios wanted more of him, but the streets were daring to. Tupac's rise to fame was happening at the same time an infamous music feud was starting to ramp up: the East Coast versus West Coast hip-hop rivalry. To understand Tupac's story, you have to understand this rivalry. You see, hip-hop was born in the early 1970s on the streets of the Bronx in New York City. The culture and music that arose from the scene has its origins on the East Coast of the USA. This gave many East Coast rappers the sense that their music was superior to that made elsewhere in the US, or around the world for that matter. But throughout the 1980s and early 90s, the West Coast hip-hop scene was thriving on the back of artists like NWA and Dr. Dre. Dre was a co-founder of Death Row Records alongside Suge Knight, and by the early 90s, these West Coast artists were getting fed up with the arrogance of their East Coast counterparts. Sitting at the center of the early 90s East Coast scene was Sean Puff Daddy Combs, founder of Bad Boy Records, which would become home to artists like the notorious B.I.G. For a while, the East and West Coast scenes created diss tracks, songs that would call out and make fun of or even humiliate their rivals. But soon, the feud spilled over into the real world in a very real way. By the early 1990s, Tupac was famous. But his life was starting to spin out of control. He was watched constantly by his East Coast rivals, by the police, by the media. And he knew it. He wore a bulletproof vest to interviews. He said things like, "I might not live to see next week." And people thought he was being dramatic, but he wasn't. In 1993, while filming Above the Rim, Tupac was accused of sexually assaulting a 19-year-old woman in a hotel room. 3 other men were allegedly involved. The victim said she was forced to perform oral sex while Tupac watched. Tupac said the encounter was consensual and that he fell asleep before anything happened. Though he was charged with weapons possession, sexual abuse, and sodomy. Now, this was only the beginning of the young rapper's trouble. Late one night in November 1994, Tupac studios in Manhattan. He was due to appear in court to face those charges the following day, but first he promised to record a verse for a friend. He walked into the studio lobby with his brother-in-law and one of his closest friends. As the group arrived, some members of an East Coast group associated with the notorious B.I.G. and Bad Boy Records shouted greetings to Tupac. As Tupac and his buddies stepped inside, they were confronted by 3 men with guns who ordered them to get on the ground. Tupac hesitated, and so they shot him 5 times. Once in the head, once in the groin, once in the thigh, and twice in the arm. The men stole $40,000 worth of jewelry and disappeared into the night. It's something of a miracle, but Tupac survived. As he was taken away on a stretcher, Tupac allegedly flipped a bird to the East Coast crew who were present. The next day, ignoring medical advice, Tupac checked himself out of hospital and showed up to court in a wheelchair for the sexual abuse case hearing. He was acquitted of the sodomy and gun charges, but was convicted on 2 counts of first-degree sexual abuse. If he wanted to stay out of jail until sentencing, Tupac would have to pay bail, set at a whopping $3 million. He couldn't post that amount and surrendered himself to authorities. From behind bars, Tupac gave interviews. He claimed that the Quad Studios shooting was a betrayal and that Puffy and the notorious B.I.G. being involved. It sounded crazy. Biggie and Tupac were friends. They performed together. Biggie had even hung out at Tupac's house. But according to Tupac, too many things didn't add up. Was it just a coincidence that Puffy and Biggie were in the same studio that night? And why did Biggie release a song called Who Shot Ya just months after Tupac was shot? Puffy and Biggie claimed that it was just a coincidence, but Tupac wasn't convinced. The East Coast, West Coast hip-hop rivalry had just kicked up a gear. A case in point, August 1995, and the Source Awards are held in New York City. Suge Knight, the head of Death Row Records, got up on stage and said, "If any artists out there want to be artists and want to stay a star and don't want the executive producer, the videos, all on the records, dancing, come to Death Row." The crowd gasped. Suge was clearly calling out Puffy, who was known for appearing in his artist videos and improvising on their tracks. Puffy was at the award ceremony that night, and the diss didn't go down well at all with the East Coast crowd. They booed Suge, and later booed Dre when he won Producer of the Year. Puffy took to the mic later in the evening, calling for calm in the East Coast-West Coast rivalry, but it didn't do much good. In the months that followed, tensions escalated. At a party in Atlanta, a man close to Suge named Jake Moguls, or Big Jake, was shot and killed. Both camps were there. Suge accused Puffy of being behind this shooting as well. All the while, Tupac was in prison, his career on hold. He was drowning in legal costs, surrounded by enemies and losing hope. And then, Suge Knight showed up. The larger-than-life head of Death Row Records. 6'4", over 130 kilograms, always wearing red, always surrounded by muscle. By this point in time, Tupac was appealing his conviction. He'd had a bond set at $1.4 million. Suge visited Tupac in prison with an offer. Death Row would post Tupac's bond if Tupac signed a 3-album deal with the label. Tupac agreed. In October 1995, after spending 9 months behind bars, Tupac walked out of Clinton Correctional Facility and into the arms of the most feared label in hip-hop. Suge had flown across the country and hired a limo to pick up Tupac from prison. Tupac was back, and he went straight to the studio. In just 2 weeks,
on the right.
he recorded most of All Eyes on Me, a double album that would become his biggest commercial success. It was angry, loud, and defiant. Tupac sounded like a man who knew his time was running out and who didn't care who he offended. Then came the track Hit 'Em Up, the B-side to his single How Do You Want It. On the surface, Hit 'Em Up was a diss track responding to Puffy and Biggie's track Who Shot Ya? But it was more than that. It was a threat, and it was targeted. On the track, Tupac accused Biggie of copying his style, of being soft, of being fake, and most explosively, you claim to be a player, but I fucked your wife. That's right, Tupac said he'd slept with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. The song wasn't clever, it was cruel. He wasn't just trying to call out Bad Boy Records, he was trying to humiliate them. East Coast versus West Coast was no longer just a headline. It had evolved into something dangerous. Real world dangerous. But the records kept selling. The headlines kept coming.
Do you think it's
and
gonna be
Tupac
sharp?
kept pushing.
Sharp
He was fearless, maybe reckless. But above all, he believed in loyalty. To Suge, Death Row, to the West Coast. Even if it killed him. Which brings us back to that Saturday night in Vegas.
Yeah.
Suge and Tupac are stopped at a red light. Tupac's flirting with some women in the car alongside them.
Is that it?
Just there,
not this one.
a white Cadillac pulls up on the passenger
But that's
side.
the place up
The
there.
rear window lowers and a hand reaches out.
So you turn right.
A firearm. 13 shots are fired. Bullets rip through Suge and Tupac's ride. Tupac is hit 4 times. Once in the arm, once in the thigh, and twice in the chest. One of the bullets lodges in his right lung.
Yeah, this one.
Suge is grazed by shrapnel but stays conscious. He floors it, swerves through traffic, and makes a U-turn.
Oh,
It's only a few kilometers before the cops pull them over. Officers see the blood and call for paramedics.
It's inaccessible.
One of them leans in and asks Tupac who shot him. And allegedly, Tupac looks up and says, "Fuck you." He's rushed to University Medical
So
Center.
that's that one back there.
For multiple surgeries.
No, it's
they
up
even
there.
remove a
It's this
lung.
one.
Yeah, but what's
He
the
ends
entrance
up
back
on
there?
life support, but he never regains consciousness. Tupac was shot at one of the busiest intersections
there was
in Las
another
Vegas. The strip was packed, dozens of people saw the white Cadillac speed away, and there was no shortage of witnesses. But no arrests were made. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department treated the case as gang-related from the get-go. To them, it was just another violent feud spilling over onto the streets. Dangerous, chaotic, and almost impossible to untangle. Officers spoke to members of Tupac's entourage, but most refused to cooperate. Some said they didn't see anything. Others simply walked away. There was a deep distrust of law enforcement, and no one close to Tupac wanted to be seen talking to the police. The day after the assassination, Orlando Anderson, the guy that Tupac and his crew had beaten up after the Tyson fight, was brought in for questioning. His altercation with Tupac just hours before the shooting had been caught on surveillance cameras. But he denied being involved in Tupac's assassination, and the police chose not to investigate further. Within days, the case began to stall. Leads dried up and public attention shifted. There was talk of retaliation, and then, around 6 months after Tupac was killed, another assassination. March 1997, Christopher Wallace, better known as the notorious B.I.G., is gunned down in Los Angeles in eerily similar circumstances to Tupac. A black vehicle, a busy street, a flurry of shots. He dies instantly. And once again, no one is held accountable. Tupac and Biggie were friends turned rivals, turned symbols of something bigger than themselves. Their murders are often thought of as twin tragedies. The unsolved part of an eventual war between coasts, between gangs, between empires. The questions surrounding Tupac's death never stopped.
Have a look at those
Conspiracy theories flooded documentaries, podcasts, and internet forums. Some said he faked his own death and escaped to Cuba. Others pointed to the government or the LAPD. Some blamed Suge Knight, and others blamed Puffy. Everyone had a theory, but no one had proof. Even now, nearly 30 years later, the full truth feels out of reach. While most suspects stayed silent, one man kept talking. Dwayne Keith Davis was a longtime member of the Southside Compton Crips. He was also the uncle to Orlando Anderson, the man Tupac and his crew beat up after the Tyson fight. By his own admission, he was inside the Cadillac the night Tupac was shot. In interviews, in documentaries, and in his 2019 memoir, Compton Street legend Keith D laid out the story in fragments. He described where they drove, who was in the car, and how the gun was handed to the back seat. He never directly said who fired, but he didn't need to. The implication was obvious. His nephew, Orlando Anderson, had taken the gun. But Keith D went further. He claimed that months before the shooting, he'd met with Puffy in Los Angeles. According to Keith D, Puffy offered $1 million to kill Tupac and Suge Knight. For years, Holmes denied the accusation, and no charges were ever against him. Then in July 2023, Las Vegas police searched Keith D's home. 2 months later, he was arrested and charged with murder with a deadly weapon. This was huge. After nearly 3 decades, It was the first and only arrest ever made in connection to Tupac Shakur's death. But the man accused of pulling the trigger, Orlando Anderson, had been killed in an unrelated shooting back in 1998. The other two men who were in the car that night are also dead. That leaves only two people alive who know exactly what happened. Keith D, who is now behind bars, and Suge Knight, who has never spoken publicly about who fired the shots. When asked if he would ever testify, Suge's answer was simple and to the point. Absolutely not. Tupac was killed on September 13, 1996. He was 25 years old. His body was cremated. According to members of his group, the Outlaws, they took a portion of his ashes, rolled them into a blunt, and smoked them as a tribute.
What's that? MTS.
Whether or not this actually happened doesn't really matter. The symbolism said enough. Tupac had become more than a person. To his people, he was a force. In the years that followed, he became even bigger. His music kept being released, his old interviews resurfaced, his face appeared on murals, on t-shirts, and in protests. People didn't just mourn him, they celebrated him. They studied his words, quoted his lines, and shared his vision. He became a symbol of defiance, resilience, and brilliance. But not everyone agrees on what he represented. Some saw him as a prophet. Some said he was reckless. Others held him up as a martyr. The one thing no one ever said was that he didn't matter. Tupac once said he might not change the world, but he would spark the brain that does. And maybe that's exactly what he did. Assassins is hosted by me, Aslan Pahari. Hannah Jose is the producer. Research by Matteo Bastaran. Sound by John Jacobs. Sophie Townsend is our script consultant. Executive producers are Joel Werner, Eric George, and Jessica Rafter. As well as listening to Assassins, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube and Spotify. Those videos are shot and edited by Tejas Bhatt. If there's an assassination you think we should cover on the show, please email us, assassins@abc.net.au. I hope to hear from you soon, my friend.
In 2018, the body of 24-year-old Toya Cordingley was found on a secluded beach in Australia's Far North. Now, the man accused of her murder is facing trial. Rajwinder Singh has pleaded not guilty, and in the case of Toya's murder, we'll bring you all the details from the courtroom as he fights the charges in this highly anticipated trial. Search for the Case Of podcast in the ABC Listener or wherever you get your podcasts.
ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music, and more.
We don't watch as much live TV as we used to, now that we're all streaming our favorite shows whenever we want. But occasionally, there are moments when live TV brings us together for those special events that we're all invested in, like the Olympics or award ceremonies or the football grand finals. One thing you'd never expect to see broadcast on live TV is an assassination. But that's exactly what an unsuspecting audience saw when they tuned into late night TV back in 2023. Picture this. It's Saturday night around 10 p.m. You're putting your feet up after a long day, blissfully zoning out in front of the TV. On screen, a live news report is underway. Police are escorting 2 prisoners to hospital for a medical checkup. The area in front of the hospital is abuzz with reporters, cameras, microphones, flashing lights. But why? Why is there so much attention being paid to this routine visit? And why is it being broadcast live on TV? Well, it's all because of who the prisoners are. Getting ready to have his blood pressure taken is the notorious gangster and former politician, Atiq Ahmed. Beside him, also in chains, is his brother. Atiq wears a white shalwar kameez. Handlebar moustache curls across his broad, disgruntled face. Atiq Ahmed's story is catnip for the local reporters. A feared thug turned high-flying politician, now a disgraced mafioso cornered by his enemies. Atiq and his brother are handcuffed to each other. The handcuffs attached by a chain to one of the police officers. The prisoners and their police escort shuffle along slowly, awkwardly. The media scrum rushes in to catch a glimpse of the man at the center of so many headlines. Reporters crowd the pair, shoving microphones in Atiq's face. All while, the cameras are rolling, beaming the footage to millions across India. The brothers give curt replies to the questions shouted at them from the press pack. Atiq Ahmed is mid-sentence when 3 men push forward. Reporters jostling for a better position, or so it seems. Like everyone else in the media scrum, they're holding microphones and notepads. They even have press IDs. But these men aren't reporters. These men are assassins. In an instant, one of them pulls out a gun and holds it to Atiq Ahmed's head. Hello, my friend. I'm Aslan Bahari, and this is Assassins, the show where we tell the stories of history's most shocking assassinations. And today, a primetime assassination broadcast to millions live on TV. The cold-blooded killing of a criminal mastermind turned lawmaker, shot in the head at point-blank range while surrounded by a police escort. Was this a hit by a rival gang, or one of Atiq Ahmed's many disgruntled victims seeking revenge? Perhaps there was something bigger at play. Today, we're diving into the politics of India's most populous state, Uttar Pradesh, to tell the story of Atiq Ahmed, his rise to the heights of political power, and his fall in the most public of public executions.